Hi everyone, and welcome back to Stamp with Anna. This week I'm going to show you a couple cards we made at card class, and we called this the Flip and Flap card. I've also seen it referred to as a two-fold card. Basically, this is your card, and it has a flap, and it also has a flip. And it's really simple to make. So let me get started, and I'll show you what you need. For paper, you will need a piece of thick Whisper White cardstock. This is cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and a piece of Daffodil Delight, also cut at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Then I have a strip of Bermuda Bay. This is cut at 5 1/2 by 2 1/2, and it's scored at 2 1/2. Then I have a piece of Whisper White, which is 3 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. And then I have some scraps. I have a Coral, Whisper White, Daffodil Delight, and then some scraps of Designer Series paper from the Bubbles and Fizz set. So the first thing we're going to do is we have to attach the Bermuda Bay strap in between the white and the Daffodil Delight. And I'm going to keep the 2 1/2 inch side as my flap on the top of the card, because the way I designed it, these squares here will fit perfectly in there with a nice border around. So to do, I'm going to use my Fast Fuse, because this is a flap that's going to get some wear and tear on it. So I'm going to take my Fast Fuse and I'm going to attach that, and it's going to be about 1/2 inch up from the bottom. Let me close that like that. And then I'm going to attach this Daffodil Delight onto my white. So again, I'm going to use Fast Fuse for that. But for the rest of the card, I think I'm just going to use my regular snail. And I'm going to line these up. And it's perfect. And now we have the basis of our flap, our side flap. Now I'm going to take my piece of Whisper White that's cut at 3 by 5 and 3 by 11 and scored at 5 1/2. And all these measurements will be on my blog. So I'm going to fold that in half. And I'm going to bring in some strips that I've cut. These diagonal stripe ones come from the Bubbles and Fizz. And then I have 2 strips of Bermuda Bay. And these, they have to be 5 1/2 inches long, but the width of them is whatever width you want. I just had to make a bunch of little straps. So I'm going to make borders for the sides of my cards. So I'm going to attach these like this. Okay? So in order to do that, I'm going to bring in my snail. And I'm going to attach that. And I chose to go with a really small border because I like small borders, thin borders. Okay. Straighten that out just a bit. And I'm going to do the same with the other side. I want this border to be the same width as my other one. Okay, and now I'm going to attach these two to the back of that white piece. And again, you can space that out as wide as you want. Get that in there to show you. So I'm going to do like this, okay? So again, I'm going to turn this one over, and I'm going to attach some snail along the side, both sides. And then, whoops. And then I'm going to line that up on that side and line that up on that side, making sure that my borders are the same. Now at this point, after you've attached this, look at your card, and if you see anything sticking out, if you didn't have a straight cut or something, this is the time to come in with your snips and trim that off. So I'm going to just take this, trim that just a tiny bit so that it's nice and straight when it gets onto my card. And now I'm going to attach this to the front of my card. And for that, I'm just going to use my snail. And I'm going to center it on the sides to make sure that I have equal border on each side. Line that right up to the top. And there we go. And there is our card. Our card is made, and now all we have to do is decorate it. So the first thing I'm going to do is on the top here, I'm going to use Memento ink. Oh, and I didn't tell you what I was using for stamp sets. I'm going to be using the Epic Celebrations, and this is a celebration stamp set that you can get for free through the end of this month, March 2018, with a $50 order during celebration. So you do have a couple weeks to get that. So I'm going to use Memento ink, Memento black, because I'm going to do some coloring with my watercolor pencils. And if you use the regular archival black, when you go use your blender pen, it's going to run. So I'm going to use Memento. So straight down, straight up, and there are my sneakers. Now on my card, I colored my sneakers in Calypso Coral. And one of the ladies at my class yesterday, this weekend, decided she would give it a try with Bermuda Bay. Since this piece of cardstock, designer series paper has Bermuda Bay, Daffodil Delight, and Calypso Coral. And my watercolor pencils all have those colors, so I could make my sneakers any color. So I'm going, since I have these in Calypso Coral, I'm going to color these in with the Bermuda Bay. And I'm just going to run over all of the sneaker. With the pencil. And because I'm going to use my blender pen to blend this in, I do want to go kind of dark and heavy with my pencil, because when you use the blender pen, it lightens it a little bit because it picks up the color. And that is why you wouldn't use a regular water-based ink. I love when I make my cards for class, and then when the ladies make them, they find a different way to shake them up and add something to them. I just love to see that. So now I'm going to take my blender pen, and I'm just going to make little circles around my watercolor pencil and just smooth out those lines, because when you're coloring with a pencil, I missed a spot. When you're coloring with the pencil, you can see the pencil marks. So if you come over it, I'm going to miss another spot there too. If you go over it with your blender pen, it really smooths it out and makes it like a nice, clean, smooth coloring. Oh, I do like that. Thank you to Rhoda for coming up with that design. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do this bottom piece right here. And for that, I cut another piece of this paper, this Bubbles and Fizz, and I cut this at 3 by 1 1/4. But instead of using the striped part, I decided to flip it over. And then I have my scrap of Daffodil Delight, which is also cut 3 inches wide, and this is 1 inch. This is 1 by 3. I'm going to attach those together. And again, this is where I would see if I had any trimming that needed to be done, because sometimes when you cut, although you think you're cutting all the same size, you end up with a little bit overhang that needs to be trimmed, and that's not a problem at all. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. I'm going to take a piece of Calypso Coral seam binding, just a little piece, and I'm going to tie a knot on this left-hand side. Okay, now I'm going to just trim my tails. And I'm going to attach that right here. And again, for that, I'm going to use some snail. And I'm going to center that in between the top and bottom of this Bermuda Bay piece off to the left. And before I do, I just want to make sure I have this over to the side so that when I close my flap, my bow or my knot is visible. See? You want to have that right there. Now we're going to decorate the front. And to do that, I'm going to, on a little scrap piece of Whisper White with Calypso Coral ink, in the center of it, I'm going to stamp "Here's to an Epic Celebration." Now, with the layering, with the Stitched Shapes framelits, I'm going to die cut that out, and then from my scrap of Calypso Coral, I'm going to die cut that out. I'm going to go run those through the machine. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with my two pieces, and now I'm just going to mount them together. And mount that onto my flap. And see, because I used the 2.5 inch side of my panel, it has a nice even border. And there is our card. I did leave the inside empty because "Here's to an Epic Celebration" could be anything. Could be a graduation, could be a birthday, could be a promotion, could be anything. So here are the two cards. This one made with Calypso Coral sneakers and this one made with Bermuda Bay. And I do like them both, but I'm glad that my customer came up with that idea, because it does add another little look to the project. So there we go. A flip and a flap, also known as a double fold. So if you have any questions at all about this project or any of the products that I've used, please contact me through my blog, www.stampwithana.blogspot.com. And if you would like to get this stamp set, which is called Epic Celebrations, as well as this paper, which is called Bubbles and Fizz, each one of those are free during Celebration, which ends March 31st. And you can get each one of those with a $50 qualifying order. If I can help you with that, certainly let me know. Come on back here on Wednesday and I'll show you another version of this card. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.